All right, so you know how we all love taking our gazelles out for a spin? Well, what happens when old man winter comes knocking? Nobody wants to find their e-bike battery DOA come springtime, right? And that's especially true with these Bosch systems. Luckily, you guys sent in a ton of great resources on this. Seriously, you've all been doing your homework.
And this is a really good time to be thinking about it because winterizing an e-bike, it's not just about like putting it away in the garage, especially with these lithium-ion batteries like Bosch uses. It's important to understand how these batteries actually work.
So less about storage and more about keeping things running smoothly.
You got it. See, lithium-ion batteries, they work by moving these tiny lithium ions between electrodes. And when it gets cold, well, those ions, they just slow down. It's like trying to pour molasses on a January morning. And what happens then? You get reduced capacity, slower charging, and if it gets cold enough, you can actually damage the battery.
Well, that makes a lot of sense, actually. I've definitely noticed my phone battery dying faster when it's freezing out. But wait a minute, Gazelle's a Dutch company, right? And they ride their bikes all year round, rain or shine.
That's true. Gazelles are definitely built for tougher conditions than your average bike. But even in the Netherlands, winters aren't as extreme as some parts of the US. So whether you're dealing with constant rain like in Seattle, or facing those bone-chilling sub-zero temperatures, prepping your Gazelle right now, that's going to make a world of difference.
So it's like giving your bike a little pre-winter tune-up. I'm all for that. One of these articles mentioned cleaning, but then it said to avoid high-pressure washers. Isn't that a little counterintuitive?
Right. You'd think blasting away all that grime would be the way to go. But those powerful jets of water, they can actually force water into the electrical parts of the bike. And believe me, a soggy Bosch system is not what you want.
Definitely not. So we're aiming for more of a spa day than a boot camp. Got it. Now, what about the drivetrain? I saw something about using wet lube. What is that? Some kind of special chain oil?
Well, yeah, you could say that. Wet lube is designed to hold up in, well, wet conditions. It's stickier than regular lube, so it clings to the chain and prevents rust and corrosion.
Right.
From all that salt and slush that winter throws our way. But, and this is important for some Gazelle owners, if you have a belt drive, you can actually skip the lube altogether.
Wait, really? No lubrication needed at all? See, this is why I love these deep dives.
Belt drives are becoming more and more popular these days, especially on e-bikes. They're cleaner, they're quieter, and they need way less maintenance overall. But regardless of whether you've got a chain or a belt drive, a good pre-winter inspection is absolutely essential. We're talking tires, brake pads, cables, the whole 9 yards.
It's like sending your bike for a checkup before the big game.
Exactly. You want to check those tires for wear and tear, make sure you've got enough tread for icy conditions, and brake pads, they need to be in tip-top shape to handle those slippery roads. Oh, and don't forget about those cables. Any signs of fraying, and you'll want to replace them before they snap on you mid-ride.
Okay, so we've cleaned, we've lubed or not, if you're rocking that belt drive. And we've inspected everything. What's next on our winterizing checklist?
Well, now it's time to give your bike a little bit of armor. Think of it like giving your Gazelle a nice warm coat for the winter. You know those resources you sent over? They mentioned a bunch of options for corrosion protection, but one that really stood out was WD-40 Specialist Corrosion Inhibitor.
WD-40. Isn't that the stuff my grandpa used on everything?
Well, WD-40 has come a long way. This specific formula is designed to provide really long-lasting protection. It's perfect for those exposed metal parts on your Gazelle. It creates a barrier against moisture and salt, which is what causes rust and corrosion.
So it's not just a quick fix, it's more like preventative care. I like that. Now, this is all assuming I'm storing my bike for the winter. But what about those of us who are, let's just say, a little more weather resistant?
Yeah, those hardcore winter riders, the sources you sent in, they actually had a lot to say about that, too. In fact, they emphasized something pretty interesting. They said that riding in winter, it's almost as much about adapting your mindset as it is about adapting your bike.
Okay, but that's intriguing. So it's not just about throwing on some studded tires and braving the elements.
Well, that's part of it, of course. But the sources, they talked a lot about anticipating challenges, being hyper-aware of your surroundings, even adjusting your riding style for those slick conditions.
So it's like the difference between sprinting on a track and, I don't know, navigating an obstacle course or something?
Exactly. It's not about speed anymore. It's about control and awareness.
That makes a lot of sense. Now, speaking of control, this whole storage versus riding decision, that's got to impact how we treat this Bosch battery, right?
Huge impact. Let's start with storage, since those sources really went deep on that. It's not just about tossing your battery in a cold garage and hoping for the best.
Because that's basically sending it to battery Siberia, right?
Pretty much. Lithium-ion cells, they're happiest. and they have the longest lifespan. When they're stored at a cool, steady temperature, think more like a wine cellar, not a meat locker.
Okay, so my basement is probably a better bet than my garage then. What about the charge level, though? Should I unplug it when it's fully charged?
That's where things get interesting. The sources actually recommend storing your battery at around 30 to 60% charge. Apparently, keeping it fully charged for long periods, it can actually put stress on the cells and lead to faster degradation.
Really? I always thought a fully charged battery was a happy battery.
It's a common misconception. Think of it like keeping a muscle constantly flexed. Over time, it loses its ability to fully relax. Same idea with lithium-ion batteries.
Wow, I had no idea. Okay, so cool dry spot, partially charged. Anything else I need to know about storage?
One more crucial tip: never ever charge a freezing battery. Imagine pouring hot coffee into a frozen glass. It's not going to end well, right?
Yikes. Definitely not good for the glass or the coffee.
Exactly. Charging a freezing battery is basically like doing that. You're forcing all that energy into cells that are way too cold to handle it, and that can damage the electrodes and really shorten the battery's life.
Okay, no frozen battery charging, got it. So let's say I'm ready to embrace my inner winter warrior. Riding that Gazelle through whatever Mother Nature throws my way, how do I keep the battery happy on the go?
Now, this is where the sources had some really specific advice, especially for Gazelle owners.
They said something about Bosch systems being pretty good in the cold, but
You have to keep that exposure to a minimum. One source even recommended taking the battery off completely and bringing it inside with you between rides, especially in those really frigid temperatures.
wait, so I'm showing up to the coffee shop battery in hand. Now that's dedication.
It might seem a little strange, but you're keeping that battery warm and extending its life. Think of it like bringing your own travel mug. A little effort up front makes a big difference in the long run.
Okay, I can get on board with that. So battery care aside, what about the actual riding experience in winter? Anything specific for us Gazelle owners?
You know, this is where those Dutch roots really come into play. Apparently, Gazelles are designed with a more upright riding position than a lot of those sportier e-bikes.
And why is that important?
Better visibility in those dicey conditions. You're not hunched over struggling to see through the snow flurries. You've got a clear view of the road ahead.
Right, I do feel like I'm sitting up a bit higher on my Gazelle.
Exactly. And those wider tires that Gazelles are known for, they give you a lot more contact with the ground, which means better traction when it's slick out. It's like having built-in winter tires.
Wow, those Dutch engineers, they really thought of everything. Anything else those sources mentioned?
Oh, tons. But one thing that really stood out was the importance of layering up. It might seem obvious, but they emphasized that staying warm on a Gazelle in winter, it's a bit different than on a regular bike.
How so?
Well, since you're not pedaling as hard, the motor's doing some of the work for you, you might need to add an extra layer or two compared to a regular bike ride.
Ah, so it's not just about being warm. It's about staying warm even when you're not working as hard. This is why I love these deep dives.
It's all about those little details. Speaking of which, remember that Gazelle International Owners Group we talked about? I bet those folks have a ton of great tips on winter gear.
Yeah, like what kind of gloves and jackets they recommend. Maybe even some of those heated handlebar grips. Now those sound amazing.
It's that sense of community that makes owning a Gazelle so special.
Couldn't agree more. Well, I feel like I'm ready to tackle whatever winter throws my way, thanks to this deep dive.
Me too. Just remember, a little prep work now goes a long way. Take care of that Gazelle and that Bosch battery, and they'll give you years of happy riding no matter the season.
And on that note, we'll be back next time with another deep dive. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss out on more e-bike tips and tricks. Until then, happy riding, everyone.
The Herd Podcast is produced by the Gazelle International Owners Group on Facebook. The managing editor and executive producer is Gary Fujioka Sr.